We're back on Startup Report. Joining me for the second time in just a few months, talking about the same thing, the Florida Bitcoin and Blockchain Summit, is the hardest working man in bringing people together, Krimitsos. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So we were in here. We did the last one virtually. Good to have you in the studio in person. We were talking about the Orlando event you put on. I went to it. I had a blast. I met people. I learned a lot and really felt the energy growing around blockchain and Bitcoin and crypto. And now you're taking it up a notch here in Tampa. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so the momentum really built in having Florida as a high tech for the fintech and the DeFi industry. And a lot of us were from Tampa, but we were in Orlando. We said, we got to bring this back in our own backyard. And one of the pivotal things that happened was Celsius, a decentralized finance platform, moved to Tampa Bay, or at least Nuke Goldstein, their CTO. And he said, I'd like to be part of this. So he's been able to come in as our signature sponsor. We've landed the Amalie Arena, and we're going to be taking over the suites, and we're going to take it up a notch, even though what we had was amazing, and we're bringing everybody together one more time this year.
That's amazing. And when we think about crypto, we think about Bitcoin, we think about blockchain. I think about Gabe Higgins, Rosa Shores, back in the early days with like 8 people at a pizza place, and now we're here at Amalie Arena. So what's going on with this growth for blockchain?
Well, you have to realize you and I are community leaders in different spaces. I was doing Tampa Bay business owners. You're doing your endeavors here in St. Pete. And then you got Gabe and Rosa who are doing what they're doing. Bringing us all together is almost like a perfect merger of all the characters in our town. So what's going on is a lot of startups are coming on the scene, but they're doing really well. Most people are not aware of them. And this is a way we could highlight them and connect them together, but also bring in policymakers so they could be influenced by our entrepreneurial endeavor. And Tampa is a hotbed of this. Florida in general is a hotbed, but Tampa in particular has a lot of really interesting, innovative entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I really feel like it's the Old West, and this is the time where you can just roll out and find the choicest plots of land. The political ramifications of taking land aside, but this is the gold rush. Really, this is the time when if you're first and smart, you have a real chance to do something that's going to grow into be something big. And Mayor Suarez has done a great job of making Miami the place where that energy is gathering. And what you did in Orlando and what you're doing here is now letting us draft off that a little bit as Florida becomes a hot destination for no income tax. And as people move away from going in office and are working out of their homes, this really has a chance to be the place to be in partnership with Miami.
Yeah, I think you and I know this. I think we've always been the place to be. It's just we haven't connected the dots. And I think this is us just connecting the dots together as individuals that are doing things in different areas. And you and I know there's some really influential people moving to our area in real time that most people don't know yet. And as those people come together and they gel into kind of the jambalaya that we've created, it creates a richer stew for everybody. But I would agree with you. The only thing I could liken this, and I was in on the social media revolution. I know you were too, very early on. Like I remember when Twitter came out, I remember the early influencers. This is the largest movement of capital I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I remember the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. This dwarfs that. It's a factor of magnitude. I don't even know how to process it at this point because it's so fresh. NFTs, people know these terms, but they don't necessarily know how they work yet. So all that has to be worked out, and people have to create what I always call the rail lines to allow these things to transact, and that's what these blockchains are all about. And Bitcoin did a good job in that it gave us a core group of evangelists, and then you have Ethereum, and there's a lot of other things out there. But I think we're diversifying into the opportunities are now endless, and they're everywhere if you know where to look.
Yeah, and for the first time, I think also we're able to make our own value, because what trustlessness opens up is the ability for you to be a bank and for me to be a bank, and to say, without all the rigmarole having to start a bank and all the inefficiencies of starting a bank and all the capital requirements of having to start a bank, we can simply take our capital and put it into a DAO and earn interest on our money like a bank. And then there are, any other service or most other services that a bank could provide, now everybody can provide. And so it really just blooms out the specialization and the creativity and the opportunity, so that all the brain power that's out there can create value and capture it in these tokens.
Yeah, you opened my eyes in Orlando, and you were talking about some structures you were looking into. And what I explained to someone as I got back, they're like, "What did you learn?" I'll go, "You know how you go into point systems for your airline points and your hotel points?" Like, yeah. I go, "The little guy now could do that on their own." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I go, "Do you realize how many people in accounting it takes to do it on the, for whatever airline, whatever hotel?" I go, "Now the little guy could create an entire incentivized, tokenized point system." I go, "We just don't realize exactly how to do it yet. It's all there, but the plumbing is being laid out in front of us." And that's just like, talk about gamifying modern day business for the little guy. You have the same opportunity.
Yeah, and you unlock portability, because one of the things about airline miles is I can collect them all. And sort of the purpose of airline miles was to keep you loyal to a brand. Like, oh, I'll fly this airline again so I can get my miles, even though I could have saved $50 by flying this airline, but I don't have a miles program there. But now with portability, you can capture that value in these tokens and then just go on an exchange and trade them for somebody else's tokens, and you have that liquidity, which again just explodes the value for the user and for the issuer too.
Well, for the one we did in Orlando, I remember there was a 19-year-old that was talking about NFTs from Toronto, if you recall, and he said, "I'd love to pay you. I'd like to pay you in it was U.S. tethered tokens." My first experience, the amount of monies I saved on fees of him paying me directly, I mean, it's eye-opening compared to the Tampa Bay Business Owners was a local business I ran for 10 years. I paid over $250,000 in processing fees when I looked at the books. I mean, think about that capital going back to the entrepreneur, not to these financial institutions that are making, a toll fee for the pleasure of being in the middle of the transfer.
Yeah, it's rent. It's rent.
Yeah, rent, right, yeah. Right. And when you look back on it, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add it up, $250,000 could have been used back into that small business to help, more resources or more profit for the owner.
And just the conversation we're having right now is a perfect just sample of the conversations that just happen every second at the summits. So, obviously you've had great success with building the podcast summits and the Podfest. So when you look at this next event, what are the things that you're going to add to it to make sure that there's all kinds of layers of value, and why should people show up at this summit?
Yeah, so this is for people. You could be a beginner and come out, but really this is for people who are deeply interested in this, because the people you're going to meet are literally the people laying the foundation for the future. We will have a small section of Podfest in there too, which is really cool. So we'll have creators. We want to make sure we have a huge level of creators in there. But we have a real estate track, learning how to tokenize real estate on the blockchain. That's going to be really interesting. We have an NFT track. What are the legalities, the intellectual properties? How are you going to do NFTs? What's going on? We have an investment track. What's going on in the investment field? We'll have a general track, beginner track for people that are beginners. And then you're gonna meet some of the world's greatest authorities in this field in real time. And the coolest part is a lot of them live in our area. So it's like, not only are you meeting them, but there'll be areas to plug into them after you meet them. So I would highly recommend, if you're interested and you really want to get deeply involved, to attend this. It's a limited number of attendees. So even though we're at the Amalie Arena, we're up in the suites. We're not taking up the ice. So we'll be in the Fire Stick Lounge, the Chase Lounge, and those lounges. And I recommend it for anyone that really wants to get deeply involved in this space. You're going to learn you're going to meet a lot of the local leaders are already signed up to be there, as well as policymakers.
It's great. So it's November 4th and 5th. Where do folks go to get to take the limited tickets?
Yeah, just go to FloridaBlockchainSummit.com. That's the shortest URL, but the event is called the Florida Bitcoin and Blockchain Summit. If you look it up, you'll find it. If you just go to Eventbrite directly, look up, Florida Bitcoin and Blockchain, but the domain is FloridaBlockchainSummit.com.
Right. And as with all these events, still opportunities to sponsor and be part of it from that side as well.
Yeah, we have a couple, right now we have a very unique problem. A lot of people want to be part of this event, so we're trying to figure out how much space that we have to allocate for different sponsors.
It's awesome. It's nothing like being in the middle of it all, as you always are, Chris.
Well, you and I are at the ground floor of something that, I think you've said this, Joe, and you say this on your podcast. I just want to make sure people understand this. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. I get that people always talk about there's bubbles, it's going to explode. Yes, it might explode from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, then go back up to 1.5 trillion, but it's not going anywhere. And this is the time to get involved when people are still trying to figure out what pieces they could do. You never know who you're going to bounce into, and never know how you're going to be inspired by something out there.
Right. And a lot of the great, bubbles in the past have still generated amazing companies like Amazon, right? There are companies that were in the internet bubble that came out just because the excitement grew into areas that were risky doesn't mean that the core companies that are doing it right are the opportunity there is any less. They're completely separate from the companies that may be out on the fringes. And so, at the very least, get comfortable with the core concepts and the core companies.
Yeah, and I think we've done a good job of attracting individuals like yourself, myself, that are more level-headed and like we've been through bubbles. So we try and stay away from the get-rich-quick type characters that are in this space, because that's not what we want to attract. We're really looking for people looking to create opportunities within the ecosystem to revolutionize the world we live into.
Yeah, and I think that is worth digging into just a little bit because people think of I think the worst thing that happened to blockchain was the word cryptocurrency because it's really not about currency. And when you think about speculation and people look at it as a coin going up and down, the people that are serious players are looking at the utility that lies under the token. So if this token, the money that went into this token is used to build a good company that has real utility. That's not, I mean, there's risk as with any startup, but that is not just trying to make new money. That is trying to fund a project that has real utility and that is leveraging opportunities that weren't available before blockchain, like DAOs that allow anybody to loan money, against people's Bitcoin, at a good loan to value ratio that keeps it safe, gives the utility to the people who don't want to sell their Bitcoin for tax reasons or whatever. They can pull some cash out. And this is just a simple structure that wealthy people have been using for their art forever. They don't want to sell the piece of art and take the capital gains on it, so they take a loan against the piece of art and use it and then pay it back with interest. And that's been the stuff of banks before, and now it's the stuff of anybody in their home. And that has granular, small, measurable utility, and there's tokens attached to that, and that's the stuff that isn't a bubble.
And the other thing I would dovetail off of what you're saying is you and I were early to the game of podcasting. I remember having to explain to people, why would you listen to a podcast over radio 10 years ago? I would have to explain what the word podcast meant, really. But anyways, I remember saying to them, wait 10 years. And they go, why? I go, because as you guys age out, the next generation comes in. And a lot of people tell me, well, why would someone buy digital art? I go, you might not get it, but the person 10 years younger than you that grew up in a digital world completely gets it. So just wait 10 years. And so you got to also think about what the next generation is bringing with them. And to them, digital is more efficient. They know how to store it. They like it. They could enjoy it. And most people don't know leagues like the NBA are selling digital plays, and they're going for thousands of dollars. And think about how much time and energy it saves instead of creating a physical product. Energy. So that's something that the next gen is really
And I actually had it spurs an interesting really reflection on what is rarity, what is value. I had another conversation about the Gettysburg Address, and the Gettysburg Address. People say it's the actual document is priceless, right? But at the end of the day, it's just ink on paper. The ink and the paper aren't valuable. It's a store of value for an event that happened in time that has historical significance. There's a rarity element to it, and there's an authenticity element to it. And so when you look at somebody, and the example I used in the conversation is if Elon Musk lands on Mars and does a Mars address, right, that's going to be typed into a computer. And so it makes logical sense if you do that and you're of that generation, that an NFT that represents the original and represents the rarity, the only difference between the two is one is paper and ink,
right,
and one's not. And so the only sort of logical mental leap you have to do is to see that the value isn't in the paper and the ink, right? It's in what it represents, and that's what people are, why people are flocking to them because
I'm excited. I was able to get in early teaching people social media. Then we were able to help people with podcasting and YouTube. For me, a lot of people ask me, why are you in this space? Not necessarily in this space. I always like what's new and what's being created. And my strength is doing events, as you know, but more than events, community building. I love bringing people together. So this is an area I could really help connect the dots and bring something that I've been doing now for close to 20 years in a space that needs it to help accelerate the future for my kids, your kids, all that. We're doing it, I mean, collectively at the end of the day. Not going to be around much longer, if you look at long-term view, I got 2 little girls. I want them to have a vibrant Florida with all these amazing resources.
Beautiful. All right, Chris, good to see you again. I'll look forward to absorbing every single molecule of value out of the upcoming summit, November 4th and 5th. And we'll catch up with you again there.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.